My name is Brenda, and at 40 years old, at Christmas, my sister mocked my son's ornament. I stood up before 35 guests, revealed her debts, and announced her free ride ends tonight. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. My blood ran cold when my sister Victoria spoke those words. Don't bring your family. They're low class and not on my level, just you. Can you believe it? I'd spent 12 years supporting her extravagant lifestyle, working to raise my children on a nurse's wage, and this was my thank you. That Christmas was about to change everything for us, and I had to make a decision. I've always been the responsible one. While my younger sister, Victoria, pursued dreams of luxury, I created a life centered on what actually matters. My children, Sophie and Lucas, ages 9 and 7. Our humble two-bedroom rental may not appear in magazines, but it's full of laughter and love. As a pediatric nurse, I sometimes work multiple shifts to provide for us, but seeing my children succeed makes every exhausting hour worthwhile. Victoria and I took different routes from the start. Growing up in suburban Michigan, we shared a bedroom, but we could have been from different planets. While I saved my stipend for academics and then college, Victoria spent it all on fashion magazines and makeup. I recall her 15-year-old remark, "I'm going to marry rich and never worry about money again." Our parents, hard-working teachers, would exchange concerned looks when Victoria made such claims. Dad would gently remind us that character outlasts stuff, whilst Mom emphasized that true success stems from contribution rather than accumulation. These teachings formed me, but they appeared to have no effect on Victoria. After college, when I studied nursing on scholarship and worked part-time, I began my profession and met Daniel, the father of my children. Our relationship did not last. He was not prepared for family obligations, but he gave me Sophie and Lucas. He sends child support checks when he recalls, but we don't rely on them. Meanwhile, Victoria left community college after meeting Alexander, the son of a prosperous real estate developer. Their whirlwind romance culminated in a grandiose wedding. I recall depleting my meager resources to assist them pay for the flowers Victoria said she required. She vowed to repay me someday, but that never happened. Instead, a pattern developed. Victoria would phone in tears over an outstanding credit card bill that was endangering her reputation, or she'd nonchalantly add how ashamed she'd be if she couldn't attend. Alexander's friend's wife's spa weekend. Each time I'd wire money with the idea that it was only temporary until things were settled. Those things were never settled. And over the course of 12 years, I spent over $48,000 on sustaining my sister's charade. Why did I do that? Part of me still saw the small girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. A part of me felt responsible for her happiness. And to be honest, part of me believed her assurances that once she and Alexander became successful, they would repay everything with interest. What Alexander didn't realize, and no one else knew, save Victoria and myself, was that his family's fortune was primarily invested in real estate and was not available for everyday comforts. His monthly pay covered their mortgage and necessities, but Victoria's luxury wardrobe, spa treatments, and costly parties were mostly paid by her school teacher, sister's nursing wage. Victoria's Christmas celebrations grew increasingly expensive with each passing year, as did her condescending attitude. Last year, she described my sensible automobile as archaic, and that Sophie take elocution classes. I swallowed my pride, recalling our parents' steadfast conviction and family devotion. Regardless of the circumstances, my children adored their Aunt Victoria. They just saw the attractive woman who gave lavish presents and lived in a house. Sophie had been raving about Victoria's Christmas party for weeks, especially about seeing the 10-feet tree with its color-coordinated decorations and the chocolate fountain she had mentioned. Lucas had happily created a special ornament for his aunt's tree in art class, a clay star painted gold with crimson glitter. He'd carefully wrapped it and asked several times if I thought Aunt Victoria would appreciate it. She likes fancy things, he continued, his small face serious. The invitation arrived in late November on thick cream card material with gold embossing, advertising their annual holiday party. I'd set the date and we'd started planning, saving a little each week for suitable gifts and attire. Then came the phone call, which changed everything. When I hung up after Victoria's surprising request, my hands shook so severely that I had to sit down. Her words rang through my mind. Low class. Not at my level. I recalled all the times I'd eaten ramen to send her money. We had canceled our family vacation to the Grand Canyon because Victoria needed aid with her property taxes. The second job I'd chosen was cleaning medical offices on weekends. My initial thought was to call her back and tell her exactly where she could place her Christmas invitation. Instead, I emailed my best friend Isabel, who stopped by with a bottle of wine after her shift at the hospital where we both worked. "What?" Isabel shouted, pouring us each a large glass. "After everything you've done for her, Brenda, you need to cut her off completely." "It's not that simple," I moaned, looking over to the kids' beds where they were doing schoolwork. Isabel shook her head. "They love their aunt, and despite everything, she's still my sister. Your sister has been taking advantage of you for years. You work 55-hour weeks, and she uploads Instagram photographs from expensive vacations." "I know," I said, "but family is family. Mom and Dad always taught us to stick together. Your parents also taught you about dignity and self-respect." Isabel said, "Would they want you to be treated this way?" That thought lingered with me long after Isabel had departed. The next morning, Sophie was gazing at the calendar where we had noted Victoria's Christmas party. "How many more days until Aunt Victoria's party?" she said excitedly. "I want to see if her pool is frozen like last year." Lucas approached us carrying his wrapped ornament. "Do you think Uncle Alexander will do the scavenger hunt again? I almost found the golden candy cane last time." Their childlike enthusiasm made my decision even more difficult. How could I tell them we weren't welcome? Because their aunt believed we weren't good enough, that the gifts they'd helped choose weren't sophisticated enough to meet my sister's expectations. That evening, I took out the memory box, which had images of Victoria and me growing up. We were making sand castles on Lake Michigan, riding bikes decorated with streamers, and opening Christmas presents in matching pajamas. When did money and position become more important to her than these shared experiences? I remembered our father's words when Victoria revealed she was marrying Alexander. "Just remember who you are, sweetheart, where you come from. Money changes circumstances, not character." Dad had been gone for 4 years, and Mom too. What do they suggest me to do? The solution became plain. They would advise me to stand up for myself and my children while remaining open to reconciliation. That night, I made a decision. All 3 of us would attend the Christmas party. Victoria could choose to make a scene in front of her high society acquaintances, but I would no longer allow her delusions of grandeur to undermine the dignity of my children or my own self-esteem. The following 12 days were spent preparing. I spent my Christmas bonus to buy Sophie a stunning emerald green gown that made her eyes sparkle. I found Lucas a nice little outfit at a secondhand shop that appeared to be brand new. I splurged on getting their garments professionally ironed and made appointments at the salon where my friend Marco worked to get nice haircuts. I chose a basic black cocktail dress that I had previously worn to a hospital benefit, and I paired it with a statement necklace Isabel insisted on lending me. "If you're going into battle, you need proper armor," she'd said previously. I also carefully prepped the youngsters, emphasizing that while adults may differ from time to time, kids need not be concerned. "And Victoria is quite picky about her home," I stated during our family supper. "So we'll have to be very polite. And if she appears unhappy about something, it's not about you, okay? That's grown-up things." "Is Aunt Victoria mad at us?" Lucas inquired, his brow concerned. "No, sweetheart. Aunt Victoria just has a different way of doing things. But we're family, and family shows up for each other, even when it's hard." Sophie, sensitive beyond her years, analyzed my expression. "Are you and Aunt Victoria fighting?" I carefully chose my words. "We have different ideas about some things, but that's okay. People can disagree and still love each other." My nervousness intensified as Christmas came. I mentally rehearsed possible scenarios, ready replies to everything Victoria might say or do. I reminded myself of all the times I had dealt with tough families as a nurse, remaining professional even when emotions were high. I could do it for my children, myself, and yes, even Victoria, who beneath her luxury clothing and status concerns, was still my little sister. The night before the celebration, I double-checked our gifts. Victoria's handcrafted scarf was wrapped in silver paper and finished with a blue velvet bow. Alexander's fishing book was complemented with a collection of hand-tied flies I discovered at a specialty shop. He mentioned wanting to learn fly fishing last year. For their home, I chose a hand-blown glass decoration by a local craftsman. Not pricey, but clever and distinctive. That night, I couldn't sleep since I was overthinking every possible conclusion of our unexpected entrance. By dawn, I'd accepted whatever would happen. We were going to show up with our heads held high, dignity intact, and ready to spend Christmas as a family, whether Victoria agreed or not. On Christmas Eve, we drove through the massive iron gates of Victoria and Alexander's estate. Fresh snow had fallen the night before, converting the 4-acre property like something out of a Christmas card. Pristine white coated the sweeping lawns and evergreen trees, each elegantly wrapped in white lights. As we neared the 2-story Georgian estate, workers were clearing the circular driveway. "Wow," Sophie exclaimed, pressing her face against the car glass. "It's like a castle." Lucas tightened his grip on his wrapped gift. "Do real princesses live in houses like this?" "Just your Aunt Victoria," I said, attempting to maintain a light tone, as I parked behind a line of fancy cars. Alexander's father had Mercedes, BMWs, and a Bentley, which I recognized. The house's facade was professionally decorated with garlands framing each window, life-size nutcrackers flanking the big front door, and a tasteful arrangement of poinsettias cascading down the stone steps. I'd seen similar exhibits in architectural magazines, but not up close. Sophie and Lucas climbed out of the car, their excitement evident as they cautiously walked down the cleared path in their dress shoes. I took it more slowly, balancing our gifts and the handmade cranberry bread I'd made that morning, a tradition from our mother that Victoria had always cherished. Before we could ring the doorbell, Victoria appeared, dressed in a scarlet couture gown that probably cost more than 3 months' mortgage payments. Her flawless blonde hair was pulled into an elegant updo, and jewels glistened at her earrings and throat. Her face flashed with real amazement for a single second before she recovered and smiled tightly. "Brenda," she replied, her voice falsely cheerful. "And everyone, what a surprise!" She looked behind us, toward the driveway, apparently trying to see if any other guests had noticed our approach. She stepped back unwillingly to let us in after determining that the coast was clear. "I thought we discussed this," she said quietly as the kids walked past her into the soaring entryway with its 18-feet Christmas tree. "We did," I answered calmly, "and I decided that my children deserved to spend Christmas with their entire family." Before she could react, Alexander arrived behind her. His warm smile contrasted sharply with his wife's cold reception. "Brenda and kids, it's great to see you." He hugged me sincerely before stooping to high-five Lucas and praise Sophie on her attire. "The more the merrier, right, darling?" he said, looking at Victoria. "Of course," she answered with tight teeth. "Let me show you where to put your things." She looked at our wrapped parcels with hardly concealed disgust. As we followed her through the marble-floored entryway, I noticed perhaps 35 guests conversing in the big room beyond. The air was filled with classical Christmas music from hidden speakers, while uniformed servers passed around trays of champagne and orbs. "Alexander's parents are here, as are the Andersons and the Taylor," Victoria told me, mentioning local socialites. "Oh, and the Wilsons just flew in from Aspen this morning. Daniel Wilson is considering Alexander for their new development project." I knew this for what it was, a reminder that significant people were around and that I needed to behave appropriately. Translation: avoid embarrassing her. "The children can put their coats in the mudroom," she said, pointing to a side corridor. "There's a media room downstairs where they can watch movies. Brittany, our sitter, is down there with the Andersons' kids." "Actually," I said gently, "Sophie and Lucas were looking forward to the party. Lucas even made you a special ornament for your tree." On cue, Lucas proudly displayed his tissue-wrapped product. "I made it myself." Victoria's flawless features flickered with something, annoyance, panic, as she took the package with fingertips, as if accepting a suspicious laboratory item. How thoughtful. "I'll just put this somewhere safe for now." Our tree decorator used a very specific color scheme this year. Lucas's face dropped somewhat, but he nodded boldly. Alexander, who had witnessed the exchange, stepped in fast. "Hey, Lucas, why don't you show me this masterpiece?" I bet it would look great on the family tree in the den where we keep all our special ornaments. As Alexander took Lucas away, I wanted to hug him for his compassion. Victoria, meantime, led Sophie and me to the great room, muttering directions as we proceeded. Try not to mention your job, though. The Wilsons are germaphobes, and hospital talk makes them uncomfortable. And if anyone asks where you live, just say north of the city, rather than naming your actual neighborhood. Before I could respond to these outrageous remarks, we entered Victoria's carefully prepared guest list. Conversations were briefly halted as interested eyes examined the newcomers. Sophie pressed closer to my side, suddenly shy amid these new, immaculately dressed individuals. Everyone, this is my sister Brenda and my niece Sophie, Victoria said with a fake smile. They decided to surprise us tonight. A mumble of polite pleasantries followed, though I caught a few exchanged glances that suggested Victoria had already mentioned me, and not in a good way. Sophie was quickly attracted away by another young girl her age, leaving me alone for a few moments. I received a glass of champagne from a passing server and took a little taste while observing the surroundings. The decor was magnificent with crystal, silver, and white with deep burgundy accents. Fresh flowers decorated every surface, and a big stone fireplace blazed with a nicely planned fire. I was admiring a nice sculpture of a reindeer when I overheard Victoria talking to two women near the bar. Yes, that's my sister, she said softly. Single mom works at the hospital. I try to include her when I can. You know, charity begins at home and all that. The women nodded sympathetically, with one touching Victoria's arm in apparent admiration for her charity. I felt my cheeks heat, but kept my cool, recalling my reason for being here. This was not about me. It was about my children having a family Christmas and discovering that they were deserving of respect, regardless of their zip code or the expense of their clothes. After about 30 minutes of small conversation with various guests, the majority of whom appeared startled to find Victoria had a sister, I excused myself to check on the kids. Sophie was helping younger youngsters with a craft project, and her innate caring talents were evident in her careful directions. Lucas was excitedly showing Alexander's father his ornament, which was now conspicuously displayed on a smaller tree in the wood-paneled den. As I observed them, Victoria appeared at my side. We need to talk, she remarked tersely before leading me into an adjacent powder room and locking the door. What were you thinking showing up after what I told you? She asked, crossing her arms over her beautiful gown. I was thinking that family doesn't exclude family from Christmas, I said calmly, and that my children deserve better than to be deemed low class by their own aunt. You know what I meant? She huffed. This is an important night for Alexander's business connections. I need everything to be perfect, and we're imperfect. How exactly? I was curious. Because we don't wear designer labels. Because Lucas's ornament doesn't match your color scheme. Don't be dramatic. Victoria rolled her eyes. You know how these things work. Appearances matter. To who? Victoria, to these people you're trying so hard to impress, do they know that half your appearances are funded by your nurse sister's salary? Her pupils drooped with worry. Keep your voice down. And that's not fair. I've had some temporary cash flow issues, that's all. 12 years of temporary issues, I explained. But we're not discussing that now. We're here as family. The children are behaving beautifully and will continue to do so. I suggest you do the same. Without waiting for her response, I unlocked the door and returned to the party, my heart hammering and my resolve stronger than ever. Whatever game Victoria was playing, I was no longer willing to participate. At 7, a server gently struck a crystal chime, indicating that dinner was ready. Guests began to make their way to the formal dining room, where a table that could comfortably seat 35 was arranged with perfection worthy of a military general. Fine china, sterling silver, and crystal glassware shone under the light of an antique chandelier. Each place setting contained 2 wine glasses, many forks, and a hand-calligraphed name card. I was disappointed to see that Sophie, Lucas, and I had no place cards. Victoria approached, faking disappointment at the blunder. Oh dear, it appears our calligrapher did not prepare cards for you, because you were not on the original guest list. Let me just rearrange things, she stated loudly enough for other visitors to hear. Alexander made a smooth intervention. No problem at all, kids. Would you like to sit by me? And Brenda, there's plenty of room between Mrs. Wilson and my mother. As we took our allotted seats, mine between 2 older women who looked at me with polite curiosity, I watched Victoria whispering to the waiter, who nodded quickly before returning with 3 place settings that clearly did not match the rest of the table. The message was not subtle. We were afterthoughts, accommodated but not fully welcomed. The first item arrived, a beautiful butternut squash soup topped with truffle oil and microgreens. Lucas looked at it wearily before taking a timid spoonful. Sophie, who was always more adventurous with food, plunged in enthusiastically. "So, Brenda," said Mrs. Wilson, Alexander's potential business partner's wife, "Victoria tells us you work at a hospital." "Yes, I am a pediatric nurse at County General," I replied. "How noble," she responded with apparent respect. "My sister volunteered at a children's hospital last year. She found it quite intense." "It can be challenging," I said, "but also incredibly rewarding. There's nothing quite like helping a child through illness and seeing them recover." "And you're raising 2 children on your own?" Alexander's mother inquired from the other side. Her tone was friendly, not critical. "Yes, Sophie and Lucas, they're wonderful kids." "They certainly appear to be." She nodded, glancing across to where they sat with Alexander. "Well-mannered and bright. You should be proud." Following Victoria's callous attitude, this simple acknowledgement almost brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you. I am." Victoria held court across the table, recounting their recent weekend at Vail's premium ski resort. "The private lessons were worth every penny," she said. "The instructor used to train Olympic athletes." Speaking of expenses, a man I knew as Alexander's college friend asked, "How's that investment opportunity you mentioned last month? Did you decide to buy in?" Alexander appeared slightly uncomfortable. "We're still considering our options. The timing might not be right with the new pool house renovations." "Oh, we're definitely moving forward with the pool house," Victoria corrected him. "I've already approved the final designs, imported marble, smart home integration throughout. It's going to be featured in Modern Luxury magazine." Alexander's amazement was obvious but swiftly concealed. I wondered how many of Victoria's unilateral decisions were supported by my loans. The second course arrived, frisee salad with poached pears and candied walnuts. Lucas hesitated at the unusual greens, but after receiving my encouraging gesture, he bravely took a bite. "And what neighborhood do you live in?" said a woman farther down the table, her diamond earrings catching the light as she inclined her head. Before I could respond, Victoria interfered. "Brenda lives in a charming area north of the city, very up and coming." "Elmwood Park," I announced clearly. "It's a wonderful community with excellent schools and parks." The woman's look indicated she was unfamiliar with the middle-class suburb, but she nodded pleasantly. "And what school do your children attend?" she inquired. "My grandson just started at Lakeside Academy." Again, Victoria tried to intercept. "They're in the public school system. Brenda is very involved in their education." "Sophie and Lucas attend Elmwood Elementary," I stated simply. "Sophie's in the gifted program for mathematics, and Lucas is thriving in their arts curriculum." Lucas accidentally knocked over his water glass while we were talking. Water splashed across the immaculate tablecloth as the crystal plummeted. His face crumpled in humiliation. "I'm sorry," he whispered, desperately attempting to clean up the liquid with his napkin. Before I could reassure him, Victoria's voice broke through the silence. "This is exactly why children should eat separately until they're properly trained for formal dining." The nasty comment lingered in the air. Lucas's lower lip quivered, and Sophie's shoulders tensed in defense of her brother. Alexander promptly gave Lucas his own napkin. "No harm done, buddy. No harm done, buddy. I did much worse at my parents' dinner party when I was your age. Knocked over an entire gravy boat onto my father's boss." His father chuckled in agreement. "Ruined a perfectly good suit, but suits can be replaced. Good company can't." The warm response from Alexander and his father appeared to upset Victoria, whose grin had become increasingly stiff. As the evening went on, she focused the conversation on her recent charitable activities, which included organizing a fundraiser for the Art Museum's new wing. "We raised over $250,000, she bragged. "The chairwoman said it was the most successful event in their history." "That's wonderful," Alexander's mother said. "Specifically, what did the fund support?" Victoria paused, evidently unaware of the fundraiser's true goal beyond social prestige. "Oh, various educational initiatives, of course." "Actually," said another visitor, "I believe it's primarily funding the new contemporary exhibition space. My wife is on the museum board." Victoria's smile grew tighter. "Yes, exactly. That's what I meant." The main dish arrived, herb-crusted rack of lamb served with truffle mashed potatoes and haricots verts. As the servers brought each plate with planned perfection, I noticed Sophie looking at the array of utensils with trepidation. Start from the outside and work your way in, I whispered, having learned formal dining etiquette prior to our visit. Victoria noticed the exchange and grasped the opportunity. Sophie, darling, that's your salad fork. You're using the dinner fork, the larger one. Sophie flushed quickly and switched utensils. It's hard to keep track when there are so many, Victoria said, addressing the entire table. Proper table manners are really something that should be taught from an early age, but I suppose in public schools, they have other priorities. Several guests squirmed uncomfortably at this transparent dig. Alexander's mother raised an eyebrow, but kept silent. Alexander was discussing dinosaurs with Lucas, purposefully ignoring his wife's comment. Actually, I replied evenly, Sophie and Lucas have lovely manners. They're just not accustomed to seven-piece place settings, but they're quick learners. Of course they are, Alexander's mother said, giving Sophie a positive smile. And you're doing just fine, dear. I still mix up my forks sometimes, and I've been attending formal dinners for 35 years. Victoria, having failed in her attempt to embarrass my children, shifted her attention to the gift I'd brought, a hand-blown glass ornament now displayed on a side table alongside other hostess gifts. Brenda brought the most interesting ornament, she said. It's quite folksy, isn't it? Handmade by a local artist, she told me. May I see it? Alexander's mother inquired, appearing genuinely interested. The ornament was handed to her, and she studied it with admiration. This is beautiful workmanship. Is this from that new glass studio downtown? I've been meaning to visit. Yes, Firelight Studios, I responded. The artist trained in Venice before opening his shop here. I must get his information before I leave, she remarked, carefully returning the ornament. This would make a lovely gift for my sister. Victoria's attempt to downplay my gift had failed, exacerbating her clearly mounting irritation. Her criticisms became more pointed as the event went through its final courses, a cheese selection followed by a lovely chocolate mousse. When Lucas discussed his school's impending science fair, she commented on how privileged the private school students were to have real laboratories with suitable equipment. When Sophie hesitantly mentioned that she had made the honor roll, Victoria commented that the criteria in public education must be different because every child at Lakeside Academy is required to maintain at least a 3.8 GPA. Each comment was delivered with a smile that did not reach her eyes, and each was intended to show her supposed superiority. For hours, I kept my cool, telling myself that my children were watching and learning from how I handled the situation. But as I watched Sophie's wilting stance and Lucas's increasingly forced smile, something inside me shifted. Years of accepting Victoria's condescension, subsidizing her fantasies, and putting family peace ahead of personal dignity culminated in a sudden, unequivocal resolution. When Victoria mockingly hailed Lucas's department store suit as gorgeous and suggested I visit the children's consignment shop, where struggling families can obtain nice old clothes, I noticed tears well up in my son's eyes, and I knew the time for courteous forbearance had passed. After dinner, guests moved to the great room for coffee, desserts, and what Victoria described as a traditional gift exchange among close friends. This clearly did not include us, as no one had informed me of the tradition, leaving me without acceptable gifts for the assembled company. Victoria made sure everyone was aware of the oversight. Don't worry about not bringing anything for the exchange, Brenda, she exclaimed, as servers handed out little, nicely wrapped items to each guest. You couldn't have known, since you weren't originally. Several attendees appeared to be unhappy with this pointed exclusion. Alexander moved fast to intervene. Actually, let's consider Brenda and the kids' presents a special gift this year. Family is what Christmas is all about, isn't it? His genuine warmth only underlined Victoria's coldness. As visitors began to open their presents, displaying pricey items such as cashmere scarves, artisanal spirits, and exquisite candles, Victoria arrived with our gift, still wrapped in silver. Let me open this now, she said to the room. My sister brought something homemade, I believe. Her emphasis on homemade made it sound like I had tied up a macaroni necklace. I watched as she carelessly tore the paper, revealing the handcrafted scarf I'd purchased from a local artisan shop. Oh, she exclaimed in amazement. It's colorful. Thank you, Brenda. I'm sure it will be perfect for gardening or something. The scarf, a lovely piece of hand-dyed silk in subtle jewel tones, was clearly not gardening wear. Several women around expressed their appreciation for the material, with one even inquiring where it came from. I imagine a small shop in Brenda's neighborhood, Victoria said before I could respond. They have the most quaint little businesses there, so budget-friendly. She laid the scarf aside without further comment and went on to open gifts from other guests, gushing with excitement at each one. Lucas, who had been quietly watching from beside me, tugged on my sleeve. "Mom," he muttered, "Aunt Victoria doesn't like our presents, does she?" "Some people have trouble appreciating thoughtful gifts, sweetheart," I said quietly. "That's about them, not the gift." Sophie, overhearing the conversation, put her hand into mine and clasped it firmly. My heart was filled with pride at my children's emotional intelligence in the face of such awful behavior. Victoria, on the other hand, had moved on to telling stories, mainly childhood anecdotes designed to cast me in a negative light. "Did you know Brenda once showed up to my sweet 15 in a homemade dress?" she asked the assembled guests, chuckling. Mom tried to teach her to sew, and Brenda insisted on making this horrific purple creation. The seams were coming apart by the end of the night. What she left out was that our family couldn't afford to buy me a new frock that month because Dad's medical fees from his back surgery had strained our finances. I'd been up 3 nights in a row working on that outfit, resolved not to ask for money we didn't have. And in college, she went on, she dated this absolutely hopeless boy who worked at the campus bookstore. He would pick her up on a bicycle with a milk crate attached to the back as a passenger seat. Can you imagine that? That despondent youngster had been working his way through college while saving for medical school. The bicycle was his only mode of transportation, and he'd added the crate particularly so he could take me on dates despite not owning a car. Victoria gradually destroyed my dignity in front of her social circle with each narrative, all while pretending to tease me as a sister. I noticed Alexander become increasingly uncomfortable, occasionally attempting to change the subject, but Victoria seemed eager to continue her show. The final straw came when she started criticizing my parenting directly. "It's really admirable how Brenda manages with the children considering their circumstances," she told the entire audience. "Public school, no father figure, living in that neighborhood. It's not what I would choose, of course, but Brenda has always been content with less." Sophie and Lucas were both within earshot, and their expressions fell. Lucas's lower lip quivered slightly, and Sophie's face flushed with humiliation. Something inside me cracked right then. After 12 years of supporting Victoria's charade, enabling her illusions of grandeur, and putting her feelings before my children's well-being, everything became crystal clear. I rose up and smoothed my clothing with purposeful calm. "Excuse me," I said, my voice firm. "I'd like to propose a toast." The room became quiet as guests turned toward me, some seeming intrigued, others uncomfortable. Victoria's expression changed as a waitress gave me a champagne flute. "First, I want to thank Victoria and Alexander for including us in their beautiful Christmas celebration," I said. "Family gatherings are precious, especially during the holidays." Victoria's countenance relaxed slightly, as if she expected me to smooth things over. "I'd like to toast my sister," I added, turning toward her, "who has built an impressive life for herself and has always had such discerning taste." There were murmurs of agreement across the room. Victoria smiled triumphantly. "Such discerning taste, in fact," I continued, "that maintaining it has cost approximately $3,500 a month for the past 12 years. The room fell completely silent. Victoria's smile froze on her face. "You see," I said softly, "while Victoria has been sharing stories about my supposedly humble life, she's neglected to mention that her designer wardrobe, spa memberships, luxury vacations, and many of the furnishings in this beautiful home have been subsidized by her low-class sister, the nurse, who apparently isn't quite good enough to attend her Christmas party." Gasps and awkward shuffling filled the room. Alexander's face indicated full astonishment, followed by dawning awareness. "For those who are mathematically inclined," I continued quietly, "that's approximately $500,000 over 12 years. Money that could have gone toward my children's college funds, or perhaps purchasing a home in a neighborhood Victoria might find more acceptable." I reached for my phone and opened my banking app. I have records of every transfer, every bill paid, every credit card statement covered when Victoria called in panic because her card was declined at Neiman Marcus or the spa. "Brenda, stop it," Victoria snarled, her cheeks depleted of color. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No, Victoria," I said, for the first time in 12 years. "I'm not embarrassing myself. I'm simply telling the truth." I turned to face Alexander straight. "I'm sorry you're finding this out this way. I believed Victoria when she said you knew about our financial arrangement. I see now that wasn't true." Alexander's expression was a mix of amazement and betrayal as he looked at his wife. "Victoria, what is she talking about?" Victoria's composure eventually broke. She's exaggerating. It was just a few loans when we were getting established. Nothing like what she's claiming. Let's see, I said, thumbing through my phone. Last month alone, $2,500 for the landscaping deposit, $600 for your spa weekend, $900 for the designer boots you couldn't live without. Should I continue? The silence was terrible. Even the servers had stopped, transfixed by the unfolding spectacle. So, I said, raising my flute, I'd like to toast my kept sister, who thinks she's rich, and to announce that I'll be stopping payment on your luxuries effective immediately. Merry Christmas, Victoria. I took a sip of champagne, placed down my glass, and looked at my children. Sophie, Lucas, it's time for us to go. Please thank Uncle Alexander for his hospitality. Lucas was perplexed, but obediently thanked Alexander, who appeared too stunned to speak. Sophie, with wisdom beyond her years, simply nodded and collected her belongings, intuitively knowing that something big had just occurred. As we walked through the silent room, past Victoria's stunned friends, and got our coats from the mudroom, I felt lighter than I had in years, as if an unseen burden had been removed from my shoulders. We had just gotten to our car when I heard footsteps crunching in the snow behind us. I turned to see Alexander approaching, his face a confusing mix of wrath, uncertainty, and disbelief. Brenda, wait, he said. We need to talk about this. Victoria was following him down the mansion steps, her fashionable shoes too high for the snow, causing her to slip and stumble. Kids, get in the car, please, I urged calmly, opening the back doors. Turn on your tablets. I need a few minutes with your aunt and uncle. Sophie and Lucas complied without argument, realizing the gravity of the situation. After they were situated, I turned to face my sister and brother-in-law. How dare you? Victoria snarled, her voice quiet yet angry. You've humiliated me in front of everyone who matters. How dare I said incredulously. You called my children low class. You mocked their clothes, their education, their home. You deliberately tried to make them feel inferior. And you're concerned about your humiliation? You've been helping Victoria financially? Alexander asked, his gaze riveted on his wife. For 12 years without my knowledge? Yes, I responded simply. Since shortly after your wedding. It started with small amounts. A credit card bill here, a shopping splurge there. Victoria always said it was temporary, that you were building your business and couldn't access family funds yet. Over time, the amounts increased and the temporary situation became permanent. Alexander ran his fingers through his hair, clearly pondering this discovery. The spa memberships, the designer wardrobes, the first-class upgrades whenever we travel. Most of it? I nodded. Not everything, of course, but a significant portion. She's exaggerating, Victoria said anxiously. It was just occasional help when things were tight, sisterly support. She's making it sound like charity. Let me see your phone, Alexander said abruptly, extending his hand to me. I hesitated slightly before unlocking my banking app and handing it to him. He scrolled silently for a few moments, his expression darkening with each swipe. Monthly transfers of $2,500 to $4,000, he read aloud. For years. Direct payments to Nordstrom, Saks, the country club. His voice hardened. Victoria, what the hell is this? Alexander, please. Victoria's voice took on a begging tone I had rarely heard. It's not what it looks like. Brenda offered to help. She wanted to contribute. Contribute? I repeated. Victoria, I've been working 55-hour weeks, eating ramen for dinner, and putting off home repairs to fund your lifestyle. I've delayed saving for my children's education to pay for your spa days. You never said no, she responded. I asked, and you always said yes. That was your choice. Because you're my sister, I answered, my voice breaking. Because every time you made it sound like an emergency. Because you promised it was the last time. Because I believed you when you said you'd pay it back someday. Alexander returned my phone, his look unreadable. The landscaping for the pool house, he said quietly. You told me your parents had left you a special investment account that matured. Victoria faltered. I needed to tell you something. You wouldn't have approved the renovation otherwise. And the trip to Bali last year, you said that was a bonus from your interior design client. Alexander, please. Not out here, he said, his tone tightening. No, I interjected. I think out here is exactly where this conversation belongs. You've apparently been living a lie inside those walls for years. As they faced off, I became intensely aware of my children waiting in the car, the cold seeping through my coat, and the curious faces watching from the mansion's windows. This confrontation was necessary, but it should not have taken this form. This is between you two now, I stated firmly. My part in it is over. I won't be sending any more money, Victoria, not a dollar. You'll need to be honest with Alexander about your finances and make whatever adjustments are necessary. You can't just cut me off, Victoria argued, panic rising in her voice. What about the credit card bill due next week? The spa package I've already booked for New Year's? Her entitled tone reaffirmed that I had made the right decision. Those are your problems now, not mine. I have my own family to take care of. We are your family, she said. Yes, you are, I confirmed. And family treats each other with respect, not contempt. When you're ready to have a relationship based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence, I'll be here. Until then, I need to focus on Sophie and Lucas. Alexander, who had remained quiet for a few moments, suddenly spoke. Brenda, I want you to know I had no idea about any of this. I would never have allowed it if I'd known. I believe you, I replied simply, and I'm sorry you're finding out this way. He nodded before turning to face Victoria. We need to go back inside. Your guests are waiting. But when they leave, you and I are going to have the most honest conversation of our marriage. Victoria's face crumbled, and the carefully built facade finally collapsed. For a brief moment, I saw the sensitive little sister I'd always tried to protect. The girl who was so insecure about our modest upbringing that she created an entirely separate identity to avoid it. Part of me wanted to console her, to assure her that everything would be fine, as I had done numerous times before. But another part, the one that had finally found its voice tonight, understood that this was a necessary reckoning for both of us. Goodbye, Victoria, I said softly. Merry Christmas. As I went to get in my car, I heard her shout my name again. When I looked back, she stood alone on the cold driveway, her immaculate makeup ruined with tears, and she seemed smaller without Alexander by her side. What am I supposed to do now? She asked, her voice trembling. For the first time in years, her question lacked manipulation, only genuine fear. You figure it out, I replied honestly, like the rest of us do, one day at a time. With that, I got into my car and drove away from the mansion with its dazzling lights and watchful eyes, returning to our modest house where the Christmas tree was smaller. But the love was real. In the rearview mirror, I could see my children's reflections, their faces solemn as they processed what they'd seen. We would talk about it tomorrow. I would explain that loving someone sometimes means setting boundaries, that worth is determined by character rather than possessions, and that truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a beautiful lie. But tonight, as we drove through the calm, snow-covered streets, I simply reached back and gripped their hands, grateful for the honest life we had, free of the pressure of upholding someone else's fantasy. The drive home from Victoria's mansion felt surreal, as if we were passing through other worlds rather than neighborhoods. Christmas lights twinkled along the way, and snowflakes floated lazily between our headlight beams. Sophie and Lucas had fallen silent in the back seat, each processing the evening's events in their own way. Are you mad at Aunt Victoria? Lucas eventually asked in a low voice. Not mad, exactly, I said after a pause. Disappointed. Sometimes people we love make choices that hurt us, and it's okay to feel sad about that. Is she still our aunt? Sophie's question went straight to the heart of what they were both wondering. Of course she is, I told them. Family is forever, even when relationships get complicated. But sometimes family members need time apart to figure things out. When we got home, our simple Christmas tree greeted us through the front window, its multicolored lights in stark contrast to Victoria's professionally arranged monochrome display. Inside, I kicked off my heels with relief and proposed an impromptu Christmas Eve celebration of our own. Let's make hot chocolate and watch a holiday movie, I said. The fancy party wasn't much fun anyway. Can we open one present tonight? Lucas asked, his resilience already shining through. I think that's a fantastic idea, I agreed. Within 30 minutes, we had completely transformed our evening. We sipped homemade cocoa topped with marshmallows and watched How the Grinch Stole Christmas on TV. The kids each opened one small gift, new pajamas they immediately put on, and the tension from Victoria's estate melted away in the warmth of our little living room. After they went to bed, I sat alone by the Christmas tree, finally able to process what had happened. For 12 years, I had supported Victoria's dream life at the cost of my own peace. Tonight, I had broken the pattern. The relief was powerful, but so was the grief over the sisterly bond I had once hoped for. My phone vibrated. A text from Isabel. How did it go? I typed a short reply that ended with, I'll call you tomorrow. The kids are asleep. I'm okay. Her response came quickly. I'm proud of you. Merry Christmas. No more financing ungrateful siblings. I smiled through quiet tears, whispering, Merry Christmas to myself. Christmas morning brought fresh snow and eager children who had temporarily forgotten the previous night's events in favor of opening presents. We FaceTimed with their father, Daniel, who wished them a Merry Christmas from his new home in California. Though our relationship had ended years ago, we maintained a cordial friendship for the sake of our children. Around lunchtime, my phone rang from an unknown number. It was Alexander. Brenda, I hope I'm not interrupting your Christmas, he said, his voice tired. I wanted to check that you and the kids got home safely last night. We did. Thank you, I replied, stepping into the kitchen for privacy. How are things there? He exhaled slowly. Difficult. After the guests left, Victoria and I talked. Really talked, for the first time in years. I had no idea about the financial arrangement between you two. I'm still processing it all. I understand. It's a lot to take in. I want you to know I've frozen the credit cards and asked for a complete audit of our finances, he continued. The extent of the deception, it's larger than even you knew. There are loans in my name I never authorized, accounts I didn't know existed. My stomach twisted with fear. Alexander, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize, he said firmly. You're not to blame for Victoria's choices. His tone softened. But I am sorry for how she treated you and the children. It was inexcusable. Thank you for saying that, I replied quietly, moved by his sincerity. We're getting help, he said. Financial counseling, marriage counseling. It's going to be a long road. He paused, thinking. Victoria, beneath all that arrogance, is someone who never felt good enough. It doesn't excuse her behavior, but maybe it explains some of it. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, replaying his words. Had I contributed to Victoria's insecurities by constantly bailing her out instead of letting her face consequences? These were questions without simple answers. In the days that followed, I felt a peculiar mix of emotions. Liberation interspersed with guilt, relief tinged with sadness. But the practicality of my decision became clear almost immediately. My finances began to heal once I stopped subsidizing Victoria's lifestyle. I opened a college fund for Sophie and Lucas, something I'd postponed for years. I scheduled long overdue repairs to our aging HVAC system. And for the first time in over a decade, I didn't feel crushed by the weight of someone else's chaos. I also started therapy after realizing that untangling 12 years of financial codependence required more than self-discipline. It required healing. My therapist helped me understand how my need to protect Victoria had evolved into enabling her, and how my self-worth had become tied to being the dependable savior. 10 days after Christmas, an envelope arrived addressed in Victoria's familiar handwriting. Inside was a check for $4,000, a fraction of what she owed, but still significant, and a short note. A start, I'm sorry. V. I deposited the check but didn't respond right away. Words were easy. Actions would tell the truth. Alexander called again in late January, this time asking if I could meet with both of them. Victoria's been working on herself, he explained. She wants to apologize properly, but understands if you're not ready. I agreed to meet in a neutral place, a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. When I arrived, Victoria looked very different from the polished socialite who had hosted that Christmas Eve. Her tailored dresses were replaced by jeans and a simple sweater, her signature blowout by a plain ponytail. But the most noticeable change wasn't physical. It was in her demeanor. The confidence that once bordered on arrogance had softened into humility. Thank you for coming, she said hesitantly after we ordered coffee. I've been trying to figure out what to say, but there's no explanation that makes what I did okay. No, there isn't, I replied evenly. I wasn't there to attack or to rescue, just to listen. The financial stuff, taking your money all those years, was wrong, she said, her voice trembling. But even worse was how I treated you and the kids, looking down on you, pretending I was better when all along you were the one keeping me afloat. Her voice cracked. I was so ashamed of who I really was that I built this fake life, and eventually I started believing it myself. Why? I asked softly. We came from the same family, Victoria. Mom and Dad gave us the same values, the same love. When did money and status become everything to you? She stared down at her coffee. I don't know exactly. Maybe in middle school, when the popular girls made fun of my thrift store clothes, or in high school, when I wasn't invited to the lake house parties because I wasn't their kind. I decided I would become their kind, whatever it took. For the first time, I truly saw how differently we had experienced our childhoods. The moments I brushed off as small slights had deeply scarred her. We're selling the mansion, Alexander added quietly, moving to something within our means. Victoria's looking for work too. I'm starting at a design firm next month, she said. Entry-level position, but it's something I actually know how to do. We're both in counseling, financial and otherwise, learning how to live on a budget for the first time. As the conversation continued, I maintained firm boundaries while remaining open. This wasn't an instant fix. Trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild, but it was a start. Over the next few months, our relationship began to shift gradually. Victoria made monthly payments toward what she now acknowledged as debt, not gifts. More importantly, she began to show genuine interest in my life and the kids. She attended Lucas's school play and Sophie's math competition, offering encouragement without a trace of condescension. 5 months after that disastrous Christmas, we celebrated Sophie's 10th birthday with a modest backyard cookout. Victoria and Alexander arrived with thoughtful, age-appropriate gifts, without the ostentatious packaging or designer labels that once defined them. When Sophie showed Victoria her science project, a working solar system model, Victoria leaned in with genuine curiosity. You know, Isabel whispered to me as we watched them, I never thought I'd say this, but your sister actually seems like a real person now. She's trying, I admitted. We all are. The most dramatic changes, however, happened not in Victoria, but in me and my children. Without the financial strain of supporting her, I could reduce my overtime hours and spend real time with Sophie and Lucas. We took our first proper vacation that summer, a week at a lakeside cabin where we swam, hiked, and laughed freely. Sophie and Lucas carried the lessons of that Christmas into their own lives. Sophie became more assertive at school, respectfully standing up to a teacher who tried to take credit for her work. Lucas diffused a playground conflict by calmly asserting boundaries. You taught us it's okay to say no to people who don't treat us right, even if they're family, Sophie told me one night as I tucked her in. That's important, isn't it? It's one of the most important lessons there is, I said, brushing her hair from her forehead. Loving someone doesn't mean letting them hurt you. A year later, we reunited for Christmas again, not in a mansion with servers and socialites, but in Alexander and Victoria's modest new home. The decorations were simple, the food homemade, and the atmosphere genuinely warm. Victoria, now working full-time and contributing equally to her household, radiated a confidence she'd never possessed before. Because this time, it was real. As we sat around the table, I realized that the painful confrontation the year before had been a strange kind of blessing. It had freed me from enabling, freed Victoria from the weight of her lies, and freed my children from the illusion that wealth equals worth. I'd like to propose a toast, Alexander said, raising his glass. To family, not perfect, but real, and to new beginnings. To new beginnings, we echoed, our glasses clinking softly. That night, driving home with sleepy children in the back seat, I thought about how much our lives had changed in just 1 year. By standing up for myself and my children, by refusing to repeat a destructive pattern, I hadn't just changed our financial reality. I had modeled self-respect. True worth, I'd learned, isn't measured in labels or luxury. It's found in integrity, boundaries, and the courage to live according to your values, even when it means facing painful truths. Mom? Sophie murmured sleepily as we pulled into our driveway. Are you glad about what happened last Christmas, even though it was hard? I thought for a long moment. Yes, sweetheart, I am. Sometimes the hardest moments lead to the most important changes. I think Aunt Victoria is happier now, Lucas said softly. She laughs for real, not that fake laugh she used to do. I smiled, glancing at their reflections in the rearview mirror. I think you're right. Sometimes people get lost trying to be someone they're not. Finding your way back to who you really are, that's the greatest gift of all.